Hello everybody, welcome to Percussion Axiom TV. I'm your host Tom Burritt, and this is episode 22. So sorry to be away for almost 2 weeks. Got inundated with finals here at UT and a run of concerts I did, for about a week in there somewhere. And but we're through with all that. We are on break, and hopefully that means more regular shows. So today we're going to continue on our series on This Is How I Roll. And I hope you've been getting a lot out of this, and we're going to transition from sort of the two-mallet part of that and some of the fundamental concepts to some more technical aspects of how to do it with four mallets. And before we do that, though, we need to centralize all of this around the idea of today's axiom, which is, which I think is something that's really, really, really important. And so, when you learn more specialized technical things, I mean, your goal really in learning those, whatever they are, really needs to be how, exploring how they can help you play more musically and help you more musically expressive, because that's really the whole point of technique. So that's today's axiom is, you always want to make sure you're learning technique that's going to help you later play more musically and have more options as a musician. That's so important. So that's today's axiom. And so moving forward here in episode 22, we're going to talk about four mallet rolls specifically. So I use four different types of rolls with four mallets that help me play chorales and anytime I need to roll with four sticks. The first one is sort of the traditional roll, which we can manipulate roll speed and relax in the hands and keep the stick height down very low, just like we talked about with the two mallet part in this series. That's a very common way that most of you probably roll already. And then I utilize the ripple roll, which we'll talk about the specifics here in a minute, but the ripple roll, and then there's another roll that I don't really have a name for, so for lack of having a name, I'm just going to call it the Burt Roll. I'll explain that. And then, of course, there's the independent roll, which, if you've been doing my four mallet exercises that we talked about earlier in episodes, I'm forgetting what they are now, but if you want to learn more about that, be sure to go back to the beginning and check out the earlier episodes. This exercise, then you already are able to play a one-handed roll. In fact, I heard from one of you in one of the comments that your one-handed roll is so much better now, so that's awesome. So those are the four main rolls that I use when I play four sticks, rolls with four sticks. So let's get into the specifics of each. We already talked at length about the traditional roll, how it's important to vary the roll speed, and so I will do that inside the traditional roll to help fool the ear, right? We never want the ear to catch on any kind of pattern. So let's go right into the ripple roll. Now, the correct actual way, according to Lee Stevens in his method of movement, to play a ripple roll is to use a permutation of 4-3-1-2 in that order. Now, when you learn this, you want to be real careful from a technical perspective not to allow yourself to use finger strokes. This is something I've seen in some younger players very recently. If you can see it from here, I don't want to swing inside the hand. That's what we call a finger stroke. Every stroke you make really needs to come from the wrist. And so the danger I see from this type of ripple roll, and I bet, maybe each of you need to go back and check this in your own playing, so we don't want to see the floppiness that comes from just inside the hand. That's going to give you one mallet that's going to stick out a lot, usually the inside. You'll hear that if I can do it here. That's not going to give us the control that we need to really voice any chords. It's also going to make just this voice really stick out, like you just heard a second ago. And you're not going to be able to do any of my other rolls, which relax, because you can't really relax when you do that inside the hands. There's too much pressure on the stick, and the velocity just gets going quick. So you can see there's just way too many things that are wrong with that. So you don't want to do that. Make sure everything comes from the turn of the wrist. And this is something that you really need to clean. You really need to be able to play this faster and faster. So it's very, very clean. You can do that if you play on the node. So you want to clean that so it's very, very clean and articulate, so you can hear every note evenly, same articulation. That's what's really important there. Okay. So the next roll, which I said earlier, didn't really even have a name for. I guess we'd call it the Burt Roll, sort of a combination of the traditional roll and the ripple roll. And this is something that I actually decided I was going to invent. It just sort of happened And actually, someone else pointed out to me. That's a story for another day, but basically it's going to be, if I exaggerate it, in a real situation, in a roll, it might sound like this. So it's sort of a combination of the two. And then the last one, of course, is the independent roll, right? The independent roll, which I don't use a whole lot when I'm playing a chorale, but sometimes. So those are the four main things, okay? So today's axiom really centers around, utilizing your technique in a musical way. So what we're going to do is right now, the rest of the episode, is just talk about how we can, use all four of these and merge into them seamlessly. So, the whole impression is that the listener will never really know when you're using one or the other. And then, all of these different rolls will help us with fooling the ear, so the ear never does catch on a pattern, okay? So, from a traditional roll into a ripple roll, there are two main ways you can do this. The Stevens way that he talks about is to actually flam each note. So you're going to start in a traditional way, and then slowly open each by sort of a flamming effect until you get into a ripple. And you can go back out that same way too, back to the other roll. So the best way to practice that is on the floor or a hard surface, a table or something, and just open it from a perfectly together to a slight flam to a complete ripple. And you can do that over a long period of time or a shorter period of time. I generally like to do it in a shorter period of time, maybe something like this. So that's one way of doing it. The other way to do it, and I probably do this even more often, is actually, and maybe this is how the Burt Roll actually kind of became known, at least to me, is just do what we just did, but just in the left hand. So we're going to slowly open up the left until we get that. So you can practice both those ways. I think they both work really well, and I usually use either one or both, depending on the situation. Then, of course, there's the independent roll. And so, we're going to close the show just by talking a little bit about, why we learn all these, right? We learn all these so we can just be expressive. And, for example, I didn't even know that I did the Burritt thing at all until someone actually pointed it out to me. And so, I was rolling in a clinic, and actually a student who was watching actually noticed that and said, well, you're doing one that, because I talked all about how I do this, and he noticed that I didn't talk about that. And so that was a little embarrassing at first, but what I realized is that my musicianship and my musicality just felt it necessary to actually do that there. So, I kind of was embarrassed at first, but then I started thinking that, well, that's actually really good because, I don't just have this roll for this situation and this roll for that situation, or I don't just learn these to look cool and to say, wow, look at that, look what he can do, which is, what some of us do, unfortunately. But it's something that just my musicianship felt like it was, supposed to do and needed to do, and I wasn't even aware of it. So that's, I really like that idea. So, next episode we're going to actually look more specifically at how I use all those and how you can use all those as well in a real musical situation. I'll try to find a Christmas carol since it's that time of year or something to play to demonstrate that. But so that's a real quick overview. There's, of course, lots more to that we just can't even really uncover at this point, meaning these shows have to be so short, but I hope that at least gets you going. If you have any questions, you can always leave questions on the comments. I invite you to do that. Many more of you are now following me on Twitter. I'm starting to use it more and more. So if you haven't done that, it's a really, really great thing, and I want to encourage you to do that. Let's see. There's lots more to talk about, but we're getting close on time, so we're going to go ahead and ask the question of the episode. The question of the episode is sort of a response. Hopefully I got a response from you guys about how you utilize your technique in a musical way, because I really hope you're doing that. I really hope that you're really spending time on good technical things, but I'm interested in what those are and how you can actually be more expressive in using those. So that's it. It's nice to be back in the driver's seat here behind Percussion Axiom TV. I'm so glad you guys are watching, and so friend me up on Twitter. Let's keep having great discussions on in the forum. So leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in episode 23.